Alright, in this lesson you'll be able to, when given two congruent triangles, you'll be able to name all the congruent parts. What I will tell you is that there are 6 congruent parts. There are 3 pairs of sides and 3 pairs of angles when you're naming all the congruent parts. And you'll also be able to write a congruent statement. All that is saying that one triangle is congruent to another triangle when you're given a picture. So, again, the first couple examples we're going to name all the congruent parts, and there are 6, 3 pairs of sides and 3 pairs of angles. I'm going to start with the angles first and then work my way to the sides, just because it's easier to do the angles than the sides in my mind. But maybe for you it's easier to do sides. We will see once you get done with the notes. So, in the first example, what they're telling us is triangle DEF is congruent to triangle KJI. So what I notice is that there are markings on each of the angles. There's one arc on D, 2 arcs on E, and 3 arcs on F. And over on this side, I have 1 arc on K, 2 arcs on J, and 3 arcs on I. Funny enough is that what we know is that since this triangle is congruent to this triangle, these 3 pairs are congruent to these 3 pairs. So the way we know they're congruent is by matching the number of arcs. So since D has 1 arc and K has 1 arc, I can say that angle D is congruent to angle K. So I made myself a nifty little chart here to list the 3 sides and the 3 angles. So the first thing I'm going to say is angle D is congruent to angle K because they both have 1 arc in them. Looking at my picture again, I notice that E has 2 arcs and J over here has 2 arcs. Since E has 2 arcs and J has 2 arcs, I can say that E is congruent to J. So angle E is congruent to angle J. And going back to the picture one more time, for the angles, I have angle F with 3 arcs and angle I with 3 arcs. I can say angle F is congruent to angle I. So I'll write angle F is congruent to angle I. Alright, now looking at my sides, instead of looking at the arcs in the corner, those were for the angles, I'm going to look at my sides. So I have 1 hash mark on this side, 3 hash marks on that side, 2 hash marks on that side, and then over here I have 3 hash marks on that side, 1 hash mark on this side, and 2 hash marks on this side. So again, when I'm given the picture, I simply match up the parts. So let's start with the side that has 1 hash mark. I have side DE with 1 hash mark over here, and I have side KJ with 1 hash mark over here. So I can say that side DE is congruent to side KJ. Remember, when I'm naming a side, that's a segment. I need 2 letters. So DE is congruent to KJ. Now let's look at the sides that have 2 arcs, or 2 hash marks on them. This side right here, EF has 2 hash marks, and JI has 2 hash marks. So since EF has 2, JI has 2, I can say that EF is congruent to JI. And again, since they're sides, they need 2 letters, and they need the correct notation above, no arrows, they're segments. In my third side, DF has 3 hash marks, and KI has 3 hash marks. So again, since DF has 3 hash marks, and KI has 3 hash marks, I can say DF is congruent to KI. Segment DF is congruent to segment KI. Here's a look at my 3 sides and 3 angles one more time. Now in the next example, they're telling us the congruent statement. This is a congruent statement. Triangle TUV is congruent to triangle GFE. They're telling us this, but they're not giving us hash marks or arcs in the angles like they did above. So what we have to do is, we don't need to worry about this picture here. We're going to simply look at the letters. So what I'm going to do is, since our angles only need one letter here, I'm going to tell you to look at the positions of the letters. So T is in the first position, and G is in the first position. If you notice up here, D and K were in the first position. D and K. Those were congruent to each other. So likewise, since T and G are in the first position of each, I can say angle T is congruent to angle G. They're both in the first position. Looking at my next example, I can say that U is in the second position and F is in the second position. So I can say angle U is congruent to angle F. And lastly, I'm going to take the third position. In the third position, I have angle V is congruent to angle E. Alright, now let's look at the sides. The sides are a little bit trickier. Again, with sides I need two letters because they're segments. So let's do this. I'm going to go again based on positions. So since I need two letters, I'm going to take the first and second position here and the first and second position here. So TU is actually a side right here. TU and GF is a side right here. So what I'll do is I'll take the first and second position, and going back to my letters again, TU is congruent to GF. TU is congruent to GF. Alright, so after taking the first and second positions, let's take the second and third positions. So again, I'm going to take the second and third. I have U and V over here. Second and third would be F and E over here, so I can say UV is congruent to FE. UV is congruent to FE. And you may be asking, what letters do I have left? Well, I've done first and second, second and third. The last set I'm going to use is the first and third. The first and the last. So I'm going to say here T and V, and the first and last here are G and E. I'm going to say TV is congruent to GE. So side TV is congruent to side GE. Again, we use the positions first and second position, second and third position, and the first and third, or the first and last. Alright, now we're going to write a congruent statement given the picture. We're going to say that this triangle is congruent to this triangle. So I'm going to say triangle, and triangle has three sides, so it's going to have three letters. Three angles, so it has three letters. And again, just like I did above, I'm going to match the angles based on the amount of arcs they have. So this one has one here, three here, and two here. So just for simplicity's sake, let's go one arc, two arcs, three arcs. So the triangle over here, or the angle over here from this triangle with one arc is J, and it matches with the angle over here with one arc, which is T. The angle over here that has two arcs is K, and the angle over here that has two arcs is R. And the angle over here that has three is I, and the angle over here that has three arcs is S. So my congruent statement reads, triangle JKI is congruent to triangle TRS. The next one looks a little bit tricky because they're squished together. But if you notice, I have this triangle right here, which is I, S, and R. So my three corners are I, S, and R. And for my right triangle, my corners are S, R, and T. So if you were listening carefully, you would have heard that S and R are shared by both triangles. When I write a congruent statement, again, I have to match up the angles in the correct positions. So over here, again, I have I, S, and R on this triangle, and S, R, and T on this triangle. So just be careful with what we're matching here. So up here, I'm going to take the angle with one arc, which is S. And down here, I'm going to take the angle with one arc, which is R. Up here, I'm going to take the angle with two arcs, which is R. And down here, I'll take the angle with two arcs, which is actually S. Up here, I'll take the angle with three arcs, which is I. And down here, I'll take the angle with three arcs, which is T. So my congruent statement is read: triangle SRI is congruent to triangle RST.